Hi everyone, this is Mahmoud Sheikh, and in today's video I will discuss about one of the important concept of operating system, which is scheduler. Okay, scheduler is a process management component of operating system whose responsibility is to select appropriate process from the ready queue who wants execution from the CPU and puts it into run state. Okay, so with this definition you guys might have understood what is scheduler. Okay, so scheduler, as this definition said, it's a process management component whose responsibility or whose duty is to pick any process from the main memory and transfer that process inside the CPU so that it can complete its execution and come out from the CPU. Okay, so that is the duty of scheduler. Okay, so now there are three types of schedulers. First one is long term schedulers, short term scheduler, and then third one is medium term scheduler. Okay, so what are the duties of each of these schedulers? Okay, so now let us discuss the long term scheduler. Okay, so for placing any process inside the CPU so that it can get execution, first we need to bring that process from the secondary storage inside the main memory. Okay, so all the programs will be kept initially inside the secondary storage. From the secondary storage we have to bring the program inside the main memory. Okay, and that duty is done by long-term scheduler. Long-term scheduler picks the programs and moved those programs inside the main memory. So I hope you guys have understood what is the duty of long-term scheduler. Long-term scheduler picks the processes from the secondary storage and move those processes inside the main memory. Okay, so now there are two types of processes which are moved inside the main memory. First process is CPU bound process and the second process is input output bound process. Okay, so what are these CPU bound processes and input output bound processes? While moving the processes from the secondary storage into the main memory, long-term scheduler needs to be pick equal proportion of CPU bound processes and input output bound processes inside the main memory. Okay, so there should be a proper balance of both of these types of processes. Suppose long-term scheduler has to pick 10 processes, then out of those 10 processes there should be 5 CPU bound processes and 5 input output bound processes to be moved inside the main memory. As I have said, there should be a proper balance of these two types of processes inside the main memory. Okay, so now let us discuss what is CPU bound process and what is input output bound process. Okay, whenever these CPU bound processes comes inside the CPU, they require more CPU time when they gets executed inside the CPU. Instead of using any input or output device, most of their time they used to spend with the CPU. Okay, they require more CPU time rather than the input or output device. Okay, so those types of processes which requires more of the time of CPU, those processes are called as CPU bound processes. Okay, so there is different type of process which is input output bound process. What are those processes? So, there are some processes, whenever these processes comes inside the CPU, they want more time from the input output devices. Okay, that means they don't spend too much of time in the CPU. Okay, instead of spending too much of time in CPU, they will be busy or they require more time to fulfill the request of either input or output devices. Okay, so such type of processes are called as input output bound processes. Okay, so operating system has to make a balance between these two types of processes. Okay, so that whenever long term scheduler is picking processes from the secondary storage to the main memory, it needs to keep this thing, or it needs to keep this point, that there should be a proper balance of CPU bound processes and input output bound processes inside the main memory, and that decision will be made by long term schedulers. Now the second type of scheduler is short term scheduler. When the processes are moved inside the main memory, now it's time of short-term scheduler to pick any of the process from the main memory and send that process to the CPU, so that CPU can execute that process and comes out from the CPU when it gets completed successfully. Okay, so that is the duty of short-term scheduler. Short-term scheduler responsibility is to pick any of the process from the main memory and send it to the CPU. Now the third one is medium-term scheduler. Okay, so what is the duty of the medium-term scheduler? Okay, so CPU will be executing any process one by one. Okay, whenever any process, let us take an example of P1. Okay, suppose the CPU is executing a process P1. In the middle of the execution, any high priority process wants to come inside the main memory, so that it needs to get executed itself prior the process P1. Okay, since in that case, since the primary memory or the main memory is already been filled with the processes, then operating system, what it needs to do is it needs to send any of the process from the main memory inside the secondary memory, so that it can make a place for that process who is raising the request, okay, who wants to get execute itself before the process P1. Okay, in the middle of the execution, this may be happen that any process who wants to get execute earlier than the process P1, who has the higher priority, makes an interrupt or makes a request that I want to get executed before the process P1. So for making a place for that high priority process, medium term scheduler needs to send an already existing process from the main memory to the secondary memory. That is what swapping out. Okay, so this duty of swapping in process from secondary storage to the primary storage or main memory, and swapping out of any process from the main memory to the secondary storage is done by medium term schedulers. Okay, so this is everything about schedulers. Okay, so as I have already said, it's a process management component which is used to move the processes from the main memory to the CPU. Okay, and we have also discussed about the various types of schedulers. Okay, so this is everything about schedulers in operating system. I hope you guys have understood. Okay, and that's all for this video, and thanks for watching.